So I had planned on doing my next video on the Back to Eden diet and the macrobiotic diet and but Paul Bragg's toxic list diet. They're all essentially the same diet, and how these diets are the perfect diets for longevity and are basically the blue zone diets. And I will be doing this video. But first, I wanted to do a video to honor Zeena Schreck, or also known as Zeena LaVey, and her, now not husband, but once husband, Nicholas Schreck. And the reason I'm doing this is because it's Walpurgisnacht. Now, and I wish everybody that observes Walpurgisnacht, whether they're Catholic or Lutheran or a Satanist or a pagan, I wish you all a happy Walpurgisnacht, regardless of who's celebrating and how you're celebrating. Happy Walpurgisnacht to you. I don't really observe holidays. I never did. I never considered man-made holidays anything worth celebrating. I've always been very pantheistic with my understanding of God. I believe, nature is God, God is nature, and nature and God are present in all people. And I almost like Quaker kind of understanding. I believe it's up to us to unite our inner light with, with God, with nature. Even when I was a Satanist, if you read the part of the Satanic Bible, God wanted dead or alive, the belief in a pantheistic God is central to the original concepts of LaVeyan Satanism. But the reason I want to honor Nicholas and Zeena Schreck is they did so much to basically enliven Satanism and to defend Satanism when it was being ripped apart by fanatics, by Christian and Catholic lunatics on the left and the right, as well as conservatives and liberals in the late 80s and early 1990s. And people that experienced that remember the Satanic Panic, remember that were Satanists. As I said, my father was a Satanist. They remember what it was like, and it was ridiculous. It was very ridiculous, whether you were a Satanist or even a pagan. Even pagans were taking quite a beating at that time. But I believe it's the reason I was reminded is Nicholas Schreck and the band Radio Werewolf, of which also Zeena was a member of Radio Werewolf. But they did a song called Walpurgisnacht. Now, what Radio Werewolf did to revive the concept of LaVeyan Satanism is it took LaVeyan Satanism and started to merge it with environmentalism, such as Charles Manson's concept of Atwa, air, trees, water, and animals. It started utilizing concepts such as conservation, started incorporating concepts like vegetarianism and veganism, as well as incorporating concepts such as conservation and embracing things like eco-fascism and things of that nature. So it started to change the landscape of LaVeyan Satanism to something more tangible, something less cerebral and more tangible. Now, of course, for many years, both Zeena and Nicholas have been Tibetan Buddhists. They're Tantric Buddhists. But also Zeena, obviously, I'm not quite sure about Nicholas. I don't follow Nicholas as closely as I have followed Zeena over the years. But Zeena, of course, does still embrace that dark archetype, that satanic archetype. She does a wonderful invocation of Kali Ma. It's very nice. I might leave a link to that. I might not. I don't know. But I'm going to leave a link to two very good interviews with her. The one is one with that pest, Bob Larson. And the other one is an interview on something called KJTV. If you watch the interview with that pest, Bob Larson, anybody that knows anything about Bob Larson, he's an evangelical moron that comes off more like a car salesman or a huckster than he does. I think he's done everything from like exorcism. He's a goofball. He's a complete goofball. But very popular amongst the evangelical community. And if you watch it, I think that Nicholas and Zeena make some very excellent points and outline what Satanism was versus what Satanism is today, with things like the Satanic Temple, which have basically infected Satanism with this type of liberalism, this anything goes mentality, and it's like, to be honest, Satanism has been ravaged. As I've said, that fat hog from Florida, I forget his name, something Lopez. I forget his name off the top of my head. But when Satanists, when people like that person start calling themselves Satanists, it should wake up those that were Satanists or those that are Satanists to the fact that Satanism is no longer what it used to be. And that's what happened to me, is when I started seeing that Satanism was no longer embodying me and what I stood for, and it was no longer a carnal religion. It's a cerebral, nonsensical, wishy-washy, people that don't believe in this or that. They want to do it for shock value. And when you start seeing the majority of Satanists not representing who and what you are, and you start wondering what has become of this, it's time to move on. And I moved on back when I was about 25 years old, and I began to embrace scientific pantheism. I embrace, if people want to know what I embrace, it's more or less the teachings of Dr. William Luther Pierce, as well as, which is essentially the same things as Baruch Spinoza, and in many ways, what could be termed New England transcendentalism. It could be considered what I embrace, the concept that nature is God, and reality are the laws of God, and that's what I embrace, and that's what I am, and that's who I am. While I was following Zeena on Facebook, she thought it was funny. I used to get in arguments all the time with the new brew of Satanists on from the Church of Satan on Twitter. And they used to not, like, they've turned into evangelical Christians at this point. They're like, did you read the Satanic Bible? Did you read the Satanic Bible? And it's like, well, yes, I did. I have read the Satanic Bible. I'm quoting from it right now. But some of the things that were humorous were, Satanism is not a religion of, did you read the Satanic Bible? Blah, 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 blah. It's not like Christianity where you go back and forth quoting scripture. Satanism is a philosophy of the flesh, or at least it used to be a philosophy of the flesh. Not so much anymore. And when I started realizing that, people like Ellen G. White and John Harvey Kellogg and, Jethro Kloss and Michio Kushi, and a lot of these people that were fervently religious in some mainstream religions, such as Seventh-day Adventism, embraced the flesh as a means to understand the spirit far more than a lot of Satanists. I started realizing I have to revamp what I think. And one of the things that was funny is I had posted on Facebook that Zeena is the only high priestess of the Church of Satan that I will recognize. And it was cute. She actually did like, or whoever handles her page, did like that I had stated that, which shows that she was paying attention to some of the stuff that I was posting about her. She is an amazing person. I think that both her and her ex-husband have done more to invigorate real Satanism as opposed to this hogwash that's being promoted than anyone. Okay, a lot of people don't understand. For example, one of the famous things that's mentioned actually in one of Zeena's interviews with KJTV, Satanism, Anton LaVey, was pro-life. Okay, this new brew of Satanism is anti-life. Okay, so like Zeena got pregnant at the age of 13 and kept her child, because it was the responsible thing to do, because Satanism represents responsibility to the responsible, okay? So, like LaVey says in the Satanic Bible, a stupid woman has no right to choose what happens with someone else's body simply because that body resides within her. In a later book, I forget whether it was Satan Speaks or The Devil's Notebook, one or the other, LaVey points out how, he supports compulsory birth control, okay, for people that aren't ready to have children, because not everybody should be a parent, but that doesn't mean that you have the right to murder a child. Okay? So, I mean, the original concept of Satanism was strictly a pro life stance. Now it's some kind of abominable pro abortion monstrosity with the Church of Satan and the Satanic Temple going back and forth to see who can be crazier liberals. And that's what I mean. I mean, I think that people that are Satanists, that were legitimate, that either were legitimate Satanists like myself, or are actively legitimate Satanists, that watch some of the material that I'll be leaving links to, will find it very nostalgic and yearn for the better times of the 1980s and 90s at the height of the Satanic Panic. So you shouldn't think that it would be the better times for Satanism. But indeed, I think that the Satanic Panic helped to forge a stronger Satanism that has become weakened as the U.S. society has become more accepting of the bizarre. Satanism is actually quite normal. Satanism is actually quite conservative. Satanism is quite law and order. And in closing, again, happy Walpurgisnacht to anybody that observes it. I personally don't, but what Walpurgisnacht is May Day Eve, but it is, of course, a traditional Catholic and satanic holiday. And yeah, happy Walpurgisnacht to everybody.